My sister once started crying and locked herself in her room after my parents spent the last of their money buying her a Gameboy because the Gameboy was grey and not pink. Reddit, what's the most cringeworthy, ungrateful thing you've ever seen someone do? Same thing happened to me a few years ago. My sister wanted a laptop. I was in college but had a little bit of Christmas money saved up, so I decided to get her something. I did a bunch of reading about what was the best kind of used laptop to buy. I ended up getting her an IBM ThinkPad T51. I formatted it, installed Windows XP, and went down to the school bookstore and got a student copy of Office to install on it. I was talking to my mom the next day and mentioned what I was getting her. My mom says, oh, well, she really wanted one of those new pink laptops. You should have gotten her one of those. I explain I didn't have the hundreds to spend on a brand new Dell for her, but this was a perfectly nice IBM that would do great for her first year of college. She was graduating high school that year. Later that day I got a call from my sister where she proceeded to scream at me and demand I get her the pink Dell she wanted. Frick that. I sold it on eBay and ended up making some money on it. I don't remember what I got her that year, but it was something cheap, crappy and from Walmart. She dealt without a laptop until she was desperate and I gave her an even crappier one than the IBM a friend had given to me that was destined for his trash can. My aunt gave a small birthday party for my cousin, who was turning 25, last fall. He got really upset and angry because she bought him a pair of black skateboarding shoes instead of brown ones. She tried to calmly explain that she couldn't find any brown ones, but he wasn't having it. I almost slapped him. It annoys me when I hear about teens and children doing crap like this, but it makes me sad for your cousin that he's a grown butt man and still acting like a spoiled kid. I can only pity him. My sister was so unhappy with the car my parents got her that she tried to sell it every time it was parked. But this was back before cell phones, so the only number she had to give was the home phone, which my parents always answered if they were there. They got her back by moving the car one day and telling her that someone had bought it, but since it was their car they got the money for it. One of my friends received a car for their 18th birthday from their grandparents. A free car. Their response was to break down in tears, saying how much they hated it because it was an old man car and then absolutely refused to drive it ever. That's about when I had an epiphany and wanted that person out of life immediately. After my mom died, my stepdad took some of the insurance money and bought his daughter a brand new SUV. I heard she threw a screaming fit in the driveway because it wasn't a sports car. BTW, me and my other siblings got nothing at all from him. Of course now she is 35 and still lives with her dad and still screams and whines for everything she wants, so I guess karma is a B. And so is my stepsister. Whoa, that's pretty horrible. The way people can behave towards children who aren't their own blood. I built my stepson a gaming computer, helped him set it up and got some games loaded up on it for him so we could game together and bond some. As soon as I had it all set up, he told me to get out of his room and closed the door. I spent 4 months saving and buying parts for it one at a time. You should adopt me, then we can game together. I'll be a cool stepson. I promise. My sister did almost the same thing. They got her a DS and it got stolen a week later. I found it as I was taking out the trash and placed it back in her room. A day after that, I found it in pieces in the trash. I screamed at that bee for an hour. Similar issue with a group of children I'll allow to remain anonymous. They complained about their Christmas gifts being either too cheap or too lame or one of many other things. Their father returned all of them to the store and bought something for himself and their mother. The following year they were very humble and thankful for the gifts they received. No, it wasn't my kids. About time we get one with a happy ending. Every Christmas my in-laws ask me to cook dinner for them. They always want steaks, and I always make sure to cook them exactly as ordered. I've been cooking for years at a restaurant, and now at the firehouse, and know my way around a steak. Every year I stand out in the cold and grill their dinner while they sit inside and enjoy the fire. Every year they insist that their steaks are pink. Every year I prove to them that the lighting in the dining room is pinkish, and if they would simply come outside and view their steaks in natural light they would know. So I go back outside and grill their steaks until they turn to charcoal to make them happy. Every year I have to listen to 6 months of complaints about how freaking tough the steaks were. My 16-year-old cousin bitched about how our grandparents only gave her £100 for Christmas. I informed her that they're pensioners and she should shut the frick up. 100 quid is a lot for a 16-year-old to get regardless of where it came from, and she really should shut the frick up. Here's just one of 2 minute early morning cardiac arrest call. We worked on this guy furiously. Got a pulse back. Everything went right. Good call. Guy gets into the cath lab right away and walks out of the hospital alive a couple weeks later. Then his cranky butt wife sends us a bill for carpet cleaning, saying that we tracked in mud on her carpet when we were saving her husband's life. Send her a bill for saving her husband's life. A girl in one of my classes in high school came in all pissy and crabby one morning. The teacher asked her what was wrong. She began by saying her daddy had promised her a Mercedes-Benz for her birthday, but she wasn't going to get one after all. At first I thought, okay, fine. Her dad was just messing with her and she didn't realize it. After a few minutes of OMG, it's not fair, I hate my life etc, she explained why she wasn't getting the Benz after all. Apparently, her mother didn't approve of her having a sporty Benz as her first car. The mom was afraid it would encourage her daughter to drive recklessly. So, the mom got the dad to buy the girl a brand new Cadillac CTS with all the bells, dings and whistles instead. Minor upshot, not even a month later, she totaled the car. As far as I know, her parents fixed it but kept it for themselves after that. TLDR. Girl who only has a driver's permit gets crazy upset because she got a brand new Cadillac instead of a Benz for her birthday. So they were good rich parents. You may share in our wealth, child, but don't frick it up. My niece is 14. For the better part of 5 years my parents, her grandparents, have been raising her because her parents are deadbeats. Because of what her past was like, witnessing abuse, lots of emotional problems, etc. She is spoiled rotten. Last year for Christmas my parents bought her a $400 camera that is nicer than any of us have ever had. This year for Christmas she spent the entire day complaining about how terrible her camera was and how it takes awful pictures and how she deserves a new one. Another story, my parents gave her a used iPhone, she's 14, a few months ago with a not-a-box case. She took the case off because it was ugly and then promptly carelessly dropped it on the ground, shattering the screen. She blamed it on my parents, saying they should have gotten her a case for it. I have endless stories from her. She also broke her nice laptop by being careless and whines every day for a new one. I've never wanted to slap a kid as much as I have her at times. She has had a difficult past, which is no excuse for her behavior, but it is why my parents spent the better part of her earlier years giving her lots of loving attention. Even as young as 7 and 8 she has been very depressed, on antidepressants and in therapy. She has made leaps and bounds in improvement, but still struggles with low self-esteem, and she's also a teenager. A lot of her behavior can be attributed to the way she was raised until my parents took her in. My parents are doing some things to curb her behavior and most of the time she is an engaging, intelligent, grateful kid, but she still has moments where we're all just dumbfounded at what comes out of her mouth. My parents have realized that they may have taken things too far with the material gifts and are working to change things. They are both in their 60s and are still supporting my sister and other nieces nephew as well as raising my 14-year-old and 10-year-old nieces while working full-time. I even have to take a step back sometimes to remind myself how complicated life can be. This irks me. I hate when people think they deserve something, then they act like that. My grandma spent a whole freaking year knitting me, my brother and sister sweaters. Very nice sweaters in our favorite colors. My brother looked at it and said, "Why would you waste your time making this? I don't even wear sweaters. I am more of a hoodie guy." He was 18 at the time. That makes it even worse. Ungrateful bastard. I knit. Sweaters are just about some of the hardest things you can make, especially if you do it right and with patterns, designs, colors, etc. If it took your grandma 4 months to make one sweater, those must have been pretty badass. Reading this made me want to smack your brother, that little bastard. My brother and I were raised by a single mother, our father having died when I was 4, my brother 8. After he died we moved from where we lived to where my grandparents live, to be closer to family. One day, my brother and I were apparently just acting like brats. I don't remember it. I was young, maybe 7 at the time. We wouldn't help my mother clean up or something. Well, my mother told my brother to watch me for a little and then she left for my grandma's, 3 minutes away. I learned later from my brother, who was told by my grandma, that my mother left that day so that she could sit at my grandma's and cry. She just cried about how she couldn't take everything that we were doing. I've never felt worse about anything in my whole life, and I was probably 8 years old when I found out. This one is about my sister's dad. I was in 6th grade and my sister in 8th. We only had 4 classes for extracurricular activities, and she'd already taken all of them, as they'd only lasted 3 weeks. So her teacher, and eventually mine Mrs. McCulley, started teaching her American Sign Language during 6th period instead of what she usually did during that hour. My sister worked hard, and became an impressive translator using sign for her age. Mrs. McCulley scheduled a special performance for her to debut her skill during 8th grade graduation ceremonies. She signed "You Raise Me Up" and it was beautiful. She fumbled a little bit during the middle of the song, but smiled and mouthed sorry to the audience, and continued on flawlessly. After the ceremony was over, her father walked up to her and said, "Well, you fricked up there, didn't you?" Instead of being proud and grateful to have a talented child, he snubbed her out. She was so ashamed and embarrassed. She never did sign again. She could have had a promising career teaching it, and he fricked it up. I hate him for that. I'm a lady. I didn't specify that. Sorry. Also, I'm not Asian, Irish and German. Anyway, I try and encourage her to get back into it. She has a 3-year-old son, turning 4 in June, and I'm trying to convince her that he'd benefit from learning to communicate using ASL. She still has contact with her dad. I have nothing to do with him. He's an butthole, and always will be. She really believes one day he'll change. She's crazy, but he's her dad. Also, his girlfriend is pregnant. He's bringing another child into the world to mess up. Yay. My first semester of high school I worked my butt off to get a 3.5 GPA and get on the honor roll. My dad told me I should have gotten a 4.0. I stopped giving a crap after that, scraping D's to just barely pass. I think I graduated high school with around a 1.5 to 2.0 GPA. My cousin, who was 16, ran away from home because her mom wouldn't buy her a Droid razor. They couldn't afford it. Her mother was working 2 jobs just to support her. She was only gone for a few days but just long enough to get pregnant. I'm gonna get pregnant. That will show them. One year I got a little pedal go-kart for Christmas. I was so excited. It was amazing. Not nearly as excited as my little sister, who got a Barbie playhouse, but she didn't want that anymore. She wanted my go-kart. She wailed and screamed for 2 hours until I gave in and let her have a go. She pretty much monopolized it for the whole of Christmas while I made a fort out of the leftover boxes and wrapping paper and threw walnuts into the fire. It was fun. I had the same issue as child, except I'd be the one to ask for pedal go-kart and my brother would say he didn't know what he wanted. He'd get the pedal kart I wanted and what I got were girly things like dolls and pink clothes that they knew I'd never wear. I was a tomboy, everyone knew it, but my entire family pretended like I wasn't and only got me girl appropriate stuff. A girl at my high school put a brick on her gas pedal and crashed her brand new Mustang into a concrete wall at school. All because the car she got for her 16th birthday was the wrong color, and she kept bragging she'd get a new one. I'm just teaching my parents a lesson. She got expelled and arrested. After that I don't know. It was 2 months from graduation. When I was a little kid, my grandmother had gotten me Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the NES as a birthday present. I was turning like 4 or 5. It was the one thing I really wanted. I loved the Ninja Turtles, and what better than a video game about them? Except, she put it in a box for a toaster. I'd assumed to throw me off from the fact that she was getting me a video game. So there I was, 4 or 5 years old, and I unwrap a toaster from the grandmother who always spoils the grandkid, getting them whatever they want. I remember the disappointment that washed over me immediately. Why would my grandma get me a toaster? Was all I could think. It was too much grief. I started to cry and bawl my eyes out. I didn't calm down until they opened the box and showed me that inside she had indeed gotten me the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video game. On a related note, Holy frick, was that game hard for a 5-year-old? You were 4 or 5. That's pretty normal at that age when you get disappointed. Know a friend whose mom absolutely spoiled her. Her mom, despite being disabled and with limited income, does everything she possibly can for her only daughter. Buys her phones, expensive clothes, whatever else she wants, and most recently a new car. Heck, she even does her homework for her, since my friend is DIing or failing all of her classes, simply because she hates school and can't be bothered, even though she says she wants to go to college. All in all, this girl is blessed with this awesome freaking mom. My friend, however, usually doesn't have many pleasant things to say about her mom unless it's on Facebook. So apparently there is this fair that they go to as a family every year, and her dad had recently died, so it would be the first year without him. Her mom brings it up and the ingrate called my friend point blank says she is not going to let her mom go. Why? Because she only wants her cockhead of a boyfriend there. Her mom, who was on the verge of tears, said, "But we go every year." Broke my heart. My spoiled teenage cousin almost earned himself a dick punch last Christmas. We were talking about what we each got for Christmas that year. Since we're both gamers, I was excited that my wife had gotten me SWTOR. He got a bunch of games, a new 360 since his old one was dirty and scratched from his nerd raging, with Kinect, a Fender guitar, a new drum set, an iPhone 4, to replace his stupid 3GS. And since he just turned 16, his parents gave them their old 2000. I was like, dang dude, that sounds like a heck of a haul. His reply, yeah right, that car is freaking gay. My buddy at school's parents got him a Honda S2000, a Burton snowboard, and him and his girlfriend's new iPhones. Plus they got to go on a cruise for Christmas. I told my parents what car I wanted. They're just cheap. I gave him a verbal beatdown the likes of which he needed to hear, rubbing on just how rough his life is, all the while he's rolling his eyes. This thread is also acting as an extremely effective form of birth control. I hope they return that crap to the store. If my kid ever grew up to be that ungrateful, I would realize something needed to change. Man, that makes me mad. I was at a UN camp for high schoolers. This girl was bitching how her 16th got ruined because the BMW convertible she got from her parents was yellow, not red. As a kid from a poor public school, I just wanted to punch her in the nose. It wasn't the most expensive of gifts, but my mom bought me a sweatshirt I really wanted for Christmas. I was in my scene kid stage and wanted my clothes to fit tight, so I told my mom to get me a medium even though she'd normally buy me a large. Well, I opened up my gift, got excited when I saw it was that sweatshirt, and then immediately threw a fit when I saw the sweatshirt was a large. I basically threw it on the couch and went, great. Well, now I'm never going to wear this. I acted like a dong the rest of the day and made it a point to not even try the sweatshirt on. Eventually I put it on in my room and it fit perfectly. I thought about the fact that I had yelled at my mom for something that she bought out of love for me and didn't need to get me in the first place. I felt pretty freaking ashamed of myself and gave her a sob-filled apology. I'm always grateful anytime anyone gives me any sort of gift now, even if it's something that I wouldn't in a million years want. I am glad you learned your lesson. I'm ashamed of it to this day, but I've got a good example of selfishness. It was Christmas time, and I was 17 and my sister was 14. One of the family friends owns a taxi company, and my parents bought one of his old cabs for $500 as a Christmas present for my sister. I was all I wanted was to drive, but couldn't afford a car yet, and here they were buying my sister a car when she didn't even have her learners. I didn't get insulting, but I was pretty unpleasant about the whole thing. Turns out, they had bought a car for me, and told me that it was for my sister to explain its presence. Yeah, even thinking about it fills me with shame. And my parents are such good parents that they'll never bring up my behavior, unless I do first. One of these days, I really have to apologize for how I acted, if I can work up the balls. This I can kinda understand though. There's you at 17 who really wants a car, and you're told your sister is getting one at 14. Of course that's gonna upset you. My little sister was 16, had an active physical relationship with her BF, but would not tell my mom. She calls me one night and tells me that they ran out of condoms and decided to frick anyway. I told her that she needed to get Plan B or take some of my birth control. I looked it up and you can take 4 of the type of pills I had to be as effective as Plan B. I did not have $55 to give her for Plan B, but I did have the extra BC pills that she could have. I told her I would drive them over right then, because the sooner she take the BC the better. My sister agreed with me, so at midnight I left to drive across town to give her some emergency contraception. As I'm pulling in my parents' drive, I get a call from my older sister. My younger sister had called her and convinced her to spend the $55 on Plan B, the same thing I was bringing her except it was free, and to call me and tell me not to worry about it. So my older sister shells out the $55 for pills and asks my little sister has any money to pay her back. Little sister tells her no. So older sis told younger sis that she can babysit a couple of nights for her to pay off the debt. Fast forward a week later, my younger sis is watching my niece. As per the secret between sisters EC debt payment plan, my niece's dad comes to pick her up. They leave. My dad asks my sister if they paid her for babysitting. My little sister says, no, older sister didn't pay me anything for babysitting. My dad calls my older sis and tears her butt about how she a cheapo sister for not paying younger sis for babysitting. TLDR, my little sister is a cuntastic skank. Simple solution. Oh, she's babysitting for me because I paid $55 for birth control after she had fricked her boyfriend unprotected. Back when smartphones were new, OMG a phone can play music and go on the internet WUUUT. My mom bought my cousin a phone for her birthday because she did well in school unlike her other sisters. The only catch was that her mother paid the monthly bill. My mother had the contract in her name, and my aunt said she would pay for it. I didn't even have a phone, and I had the top grades of the entire school. Immediately, they pretended my mom said she would pay the bill. My mother went to the phone store, paid a $300 fee, and closed the account. My mother doesn't buy anyone presents anymore. Also, my uncle, who is younger than me, breaks everything. His parents got him a $200 longboard, and he took the wheels off and he put them on a $20 Walmart skateboard. He threw his iPhone at a kid because he was mad. He punched a flat screen TV because he lost a Call of Duty match. He breaks Xbox remotes every now and then because he is a sore loser. His dad just bought him a $400 paintball gun. I already have my popcorn. One Christmas the only thing I wanted was a Super Nintendo. I was probably about 10 or 11. Granted, this was after the N64 had already come out, but I believed so hard that Santa Claus could work miracles that I thought he could get me a Super Nintendo new in box. After I opened all my gifts and realized a Super Nintendo was not among them, I began to cry. Looking back on that day, I feel really horrible about it. We ended up with a compromise. I returned one of my gifts and used the money to purchase a used Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo stopped working a couple years later, but that Christmas morning is something I'll always be embarrassed of. Also, don't let your kids believe in Santa Claus well into the 4th or 5th grade. This year for Valentine's Day, my brother-in-law decided to make a weekend of it in Vegas for his wife. He booked a suite at the Rio, couples massages, 2 really fancy dinners, VIP seating at one of the clubs, the whole 9 yards. His wife finds out about the whole thing, but my brother-in-law didn't know she knew, and decides she wants to make a girls' weekend out of it instead. So on Valentine's Day, just as my brother-in-law is getting ready to take his wife out, she tells him that she cancelled everything but the room and the VIP club seating, and that he should just stay home with the kid because her and her friends are spending the weekend in the room and he's not invited. Long story short, they're now separated, with a divorce on the horizon. All that can come to mind is my girlfriend, soon to perhaps be ex. She cooked dinner on Friday night and Saturday after she left for work. I stuck behind and cleaned her entire apartment, washed all the pots and pans. It was Italian so it required a lot to cook it, then went on to clean her whole place. This morning she snapped at me for washing the dishes twice. I didn't know the ones in the washer were already clean. And then I told her, wow, I guess I shouldn't have washed all those pots, and your entire apartment too. I have spinal surgery tomorrow, Monday, and 2 severely herniated discs in my back. and it hurt a lot to do it, but I like trying to help her. I've taken her out for countless nice meals which she ruins with her negativity. The waitress will ask her, "Do you want another drink?" and she will respond in a bitchy tone, "I don't know, do I?" and the waitress will just give her a look of confusion. I'm tired of having to apologize for her and leave huge tips because of her cuntiness. I have surgery on Monday and I CC'd her on the email to my parents which just states the time and place. My parents are taking me, and all she said that night was, "Why did you send me this email?" I said, "I thought you'd want to know the details." And she said, "PFFT, I'm not waking up at 6:30. Frick, I'm ranting. Leave her, seriously, and best wishes for a speedy recovery. Thus seems like a good time for you to make a fresh start. I went to high school with a spoiled rich kid who complained about the fact that his parents bought him a car and paid for his car insurance, but wouldn't pay for his gas, except to get to school. Everybody wanted to punch him. A woman I worked with bought iPads for her children for Christmas. They both got mad and refused the gifts. The daughter started crying and locked herself in her room for the rest of the day. They wanted to go to New York City, not have a stupid computer. Maybe some context would help. The daughter wanted to go to Nick to do shopping and to see Broadway plays. They had already been at least once before for cultural reasons. The son wanted a car. This may not have been the best example, but it was the first thing I thought of after reading Up's example. Also, we live in North Carolina, so it's not like we can just pop into town for the day. Both were in their very early 20s at this time. My sister and I have similar, awful stories. I'll let you guys decide who was worse. Around my junior year of high school, my parents purchased 2 cars, a used car for my mother, and a custom-made, brand new car for my sister's undergraduate degree present. At the end of my junior year, my parents gave me my sister's car to drive. I loved that car. I didn't care how beat up and old it was. I still decorated the crap out of the interior and made it my second home. Sadly, at the end of my senior year of high school, my car was on its last leg. I was moving 4 hours away for university, and my parents didn't want me risking my car breaking down on the way. They decided that they would give my car away and have me drive our old, beat up, half-working company truck. The family business was in construction, instead. In retrospect, they were probably joking. Because if they were really concerned about my car breaking down, why would they give me a vehicle in even worse condition? But it didn't matter. I still threw a fit. I hated trucks. I was genuinely terrified of driving something so big, and I would not be assuaged into it. In the end, I won out. My mother drove the truck, and I got her car. To this day, I feel deeply guilty for what I made my mother put up with. Fast forward to the first few weeks of my first year in university. My sister gets into an awful car accident, totaling her custom-made car. My parents immediately purchased a new car for her. She was driving a black Toyota Matrix, but complained that it was too small for her dogs, so they got her a black Subaru Outback, but she refused to drive it. She hated station wagons. She thought they were hideous, and she was obviously too cool to be driving a mom mobile. So, they caved in and bought her the gas-guzzling SUV of her choice, and my mother drove the Subaru instead. I think the most amusing part about our ungratefulness is how it's evolved over the years. When, after my college graduation, my parents decided they wanted to sell my car and give me the Subaru, I told them I was grateful for having any vehicle at all, especially one I didn't have to pay for, and I would be happy with whatever they decided. My sister, on the other hand, complained about her free SUV for years, and ended up trading it in earlier this year for, and taking out a $15,000 loan to pay for the rest of a brand new one. Your sister is worse. My little cousin only goes over to my aunt's house to play with my other, older, more respectable cousin's Xbox. For whatever ungodly reason, my aunt adores this kid, thinks he's just a little genius, and is going to grow up to do great things. Isn't even the kid's mom my other aunt is. Sorry if this is a bit confusing. I have a rather large family, and she can't seem to see what a little brat he is. My cousin and I both see him in jail before he turns 15. Even his sister, my best friend cousin, hates him. So anyway, he begs and cries and screams. throwing himself up against the wall, tantrums when his mom won't let him come visit my aunt. So finally, she's just like, whatever, go. So when on the ride home, my aunt tries to do the whole "he ran away" form of excuse and say, none of the computers seem to be working in the area, so you'll have to stay off that, and Brian doesn't have his Xbox with him this weekend. The kid started screaming about every one of us he hated. Hated my aunt, hated my mom, hated me, hated Brian, his sister, hated my aunt's animals. She owns a farm, and that broke my heart cause I love those animals. So my aunt, feelings hurt into oblivion, pushes him off onto my mom. Well, his sister came to stay with us cause she was something like a sister to me. So we're in my room, door locked so he doesn't come in. He's out-iced the door, throwing himself against it, screaming, yelling, crying because he wants to play my Xbox. Up to this point it seems heartless of me to just not let him play, but let me explain. He doesn't actually play it. He just presses buttons and messes with the home screen, deleting my DLC, saves, and one time even my mom's profile. Then he just goes online and wastes my points, buying whatever, just because it looked like he could. Getting back, my mom even starts begging me to just please let him in, so I put my Xbox up into my closet shelf and unlock my door. Done. To even have a chance to open eye for him as he just busts on through and prances happily over to where my Xbox should be, sees it's not there, drops to his knees, and begins to scream bloody murder once again. I have never wanted to give an embolism to someone so much in my life. TLDR, my little cousin. Punch him hard in the thigh. If you're lucky, might cause some blood to pool and an embolus to form. I spent 4 hours researching and comparing statistics, reviews, and benchmarks for parts for a friend, so we could build him a decent gaming rig, all within a certain constraint. Calls me 20 minutes later, tells me my advice is crap, and that his friend from some crappy computer company down the road said that I didn't know what I was talking about, and that he should just buy a pre-built rig from that store. Note, these guys know frick all about computers. I don't even know how they are still running. I almost walked to his house to stab him in the face, but then I remembered prison probably sucks. Just sit back and wait for when he has his bee and moan about his pre-built rig being as crap as you already know it is, then laugh in his face. I was at my friend's 16th birthday party in high school, and she got pissy and upset when she was gifted with a few shirts that weren't to her liking. I was so irritated with her that night. She was always complaining about how she didn't have friends, and this was one of the first times where it became very obvious as to why. My boyfriend's little brother, who was 10 at the time, threw a tantrum Christmas morning because he didn't want to get dressed to go to grandma's house because he was playing video games. The cringeworthy part is that he used his grandfather's recent passing as an excuse to throw a fit. He told his brother the real reason he didn't want to get dressed, then bald-faced lied to his parents so they would take pity on him. He totally manipulated them to get his way. They let him play video games for an extra 20 minutes. My brother once wouldn't take a shower to get ready for a wedding we had to go to. My dad threw him in the tub with all his clothes on. Haha, made him so mad. High school friend's birthday. Her mom buys her a Wii from eBay for like $600, in addition to a laptop. Friend also gets a bunch of money from relatives. I mentioned some PS2 game in passing and my friend decides she wants to play it again, then tells her mom to go buy her a PS2. Her mom tells her to spend the birthday money she got and the friend gets furious. Her mom eventually caves. It was pretty cheap since it wasn't a new console, but Jesus Christ. Her mom just spent hundreds to get her a Wii, which she ignored because she wanted to play some nostalgic PS2 game, and she had her own money. So glad I cut ties with her shortly after. Heck, my parents got me a pink GBA when I wanted a blue one. Didn't give a crap though and played it non-stop anyway. A cousin of mine recently graduated high school. I couldn't travel to attend, but a family member of mine relayed this story. She also has an older sibling who was graduating college on the same day, but roughly 100 miles away from her graduation. so their parents were working hard to make sure family could represent and be there for each of their kids. My aunt and uncle also spent tons of time and a fair amount of money preparing a joint post-ceremony party for the both of them, inviting family and friends, getting her a nice dress, basically doing everything to make sure the day goes off perfectly for both of their kids. Needless to say, the parents were exhausted, but happy to celebrate this big moment in their kids' lives. The day of the graduation ceremonies, my youngest cousin starts demanding that she has to have a new pair of wedges because all of her friends were going to be wearing them. When her parents say that they can't really afford them after all the money they've spent on everything so far, she launches into a tirade, saying how terrible it's going to be, how awful her parents are to her, how they never give her anything, blah blah blah. At this point, my uncle gets furious and starts laying out everything that they're doing for her that day, how they can't spend any more money on this, and how she can just deal with having different shoes from her friends. So what does my cousin do at this point? She goes to a relative who wasn't privy to the fight and convinces them to buy her the dang shoes as a graduation gift, basically an F you to her parents. And now has another family member inexplicably in the middle of their madness. There was a host of other things that weekend, but this one really was the crap topping on the BS cake. My older sister absolutely cracked it. Australian for had a hissy fit when she had to use her Centrelink money, government money, to come interstate when my dad was in hospital because, wait for it, he didn't die. She actually said, I spent all that money and he didn't even die. I lost my passive aggressive crap and have barely spoken to her since. We have had a few disagreements over the years. What a heartless bee. That's really all I can think to say. Well, this one is me. I got a Nintendo 64 when I was younger and my father was just divorced so he didn't have much money. I kicked and screamed because he didn't get the new game I wanted. I think it was Half-Life. I feel so bad because my dad always worked hard to make me happy. Makes me cry when I think of it today. I used to go to boarding school, and a boy in a younger year broke his laptop. Apparently, he'd read something online and tried to do something to it so he could dodge the school's internet censorship system and had no idea what he was doing. I walked past while he was calling his mother and telling her about it. Basically, he wanted her to buy him a new one and mail it over, which is obviously very expensive and a lot of work. I guess she said no, because then he started swearing at her like crazy. People who swear at their mothers. I just can't comprehend that kind of thing. When I was about 11, me and my two sisters ran downstairs on Christmas morning and flung open the sitting room door to see what Santa had left for us. We were a comfortable middle-class family, never spoiled. We'd get one big present and a number of little stocking fears each year. The big present might be something like a new bicycle or a Skull-Extric set. Well, this year, my present dominated the whole room. A half-sized snooker table just for me. The story goes that my eyes went wide like never before. I bolted over to it and spent about 10 minutes just circling it in silence, my hands brushing against the cushions with awe and wonder. After the 10 minutes, I turned around, ran over to my dad and gave him the biggest hug I could. My dad still says that was his happiest and most memorable Christmas ever, because getting a hug out of me was next to impossible. Not that I was sullen or anything, just not big on physical contact, and a spontaneous one was unheard of. Well, I spent the next several years playing loads of snooker with my dad. We bonded over it a lot. It was always something we could do of an evening with a nice little chat. When I moved out and went to university, I was able to use my snooker skills to win enough money at pool to see me through all the drinks I needed in the student union. I'm 30 now, and my current home is still too small for the snooker table, but it's still sitting in my parents' garage, waiting for me to have enough room to bring it back into my life and my heart. You have been visited by the romantic doggo. Comment love is magic so you never fall in the friend zone. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.